Hello everyone and welcome to edition 241 of the NRF1 podcast, because Norfolk knows Formula One. This is your F1 podcast straight out of Norfolk, UK, where Team Lotus thrived, Martin Brundle learned to ride with stabilisers, and George Russell shares a coffee with Alex Albon, although I imagine Alex this week is paying. We are sat here at the iconic Rushcutters public house on the outskirts of Norwich. We are also going out on Future Radio, thanks for that, Steve, as well as across all our podcast channels. And in our 8th season, we are here to review the 2019 Chinese Grand Prix. I am sports journalist Michael Bailey. Hello there, good evening to you. And joining us on tonight's pod, we have Lewis Hamilton fanatic Steve Rust.
Good evening.
And the F1 fan with the wizardy beard, Phil Gray.
Evening, you right?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, and a particularly short haircut this time.
Yeah. It's the hair's going on top, so I've just given up.
Is that a razor job, or is that just clippers?
It's clippers with like a really short one.
Good work. That is proper maintenance. Well done. Lovely to have you. How are you, Steve? We haven't seen you for ages. How are you doing?
Very, very good, thanks. Yeah, it's been a while actually. I think the last pod I did was probably the end of season one, which presumably was December, I guess. Yeah, being the end of the season. So yeah, it's been a while now.
That's a long time. What have you done with your winter? What have you been up to?
Busy, just working, and not necessarily at work, but all kinds of other things. You know, I'm just such a busy person these days, hence why I'm not on so many pods as much as I'd like to, but maybe that'll change.
Maybe that will change. It's great to have you today on the pod. Phil, how are you diddling?
All right, mate, all right.
Did you enjoy the Community Sports Foundation karting? You did very well, your team.
Yeah, no, I was really good. Had a good day out doing that. That was good fun. Back out for a couple of days after.
Well, you did get a bit racy, so that's probably why.
Yeah, I didn't push that bloke off the track. It just edged him.
Whatever. I don't think there's any pictorial evidence, sadly, but there we go. Good stuff. Well, just a little heads up, we're going to keep the swearing down to a minimum because that's going to save me editing time. I feel like death, which is mostly not down to the Formula One, the race wasn't that bad, but it has been a busy time, and I was in Wigan yesterday, which is of course thoroughly exciting for all us football fans, but not really conducive to the Formula One schedule.
I think half of Norwich went to that, didn't they? That's pretty much it.
That is the way. So I plan to do that, so we'll just forgive me if I am making loads of mistakes. It's probably the best way to put it, but you know, we'll certainly have some decent Formula One chat, I can assure you. Speaking of which, let's talk about the race, shall we? The Chinese Grand Prix, won of course by Lewis Hamilton, second Valtteri Bottas, a third Mercedes, 1-2 out of 3 races this season already. Where was all this in testing?
Use of sandbags by Mercedes.
Extra sandbags, I should think.
I think it's a kind of a replication of the last 2 to 3 years, I think, really, where in terms of testing it's always been Ferrari have kind of been on the top of the timesheets. Mercedes been dragging behind, and they're very good at playing this media game. You know, maybe this time it was genuine and they generally found things, but there's not a lot of time between the end of testing and the first race, and things take ages to develop in Formula One, so they would have known, so I wouldn't really buy into that. But it just kind of replicates the last couple of seasons, really, sort of 17, 18, exactly what's happened. But this is their strongest start to a season since the start of the hybrid era, you know, where they're winning races from that word off. Because if you think back to last season before, they didn't really fully get going until kind of even halfway into the European season, really, and it's always the last half where they're just unstoppable and make up for the loss. So it's a strong start.
It's remarkable, really, isn't it? And obviously we'll talk about Ferrari in a moment, but also distinctly ominous. I mean, I know that we've already had Dan Springle on the group telling us, well, it's okay because the next few tracks will suit Ferrari and blah 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 and all this sort of thing. But I mean, we're not in a race where there's more than 2 teams in it. Like last year, Red Bull are just too far behind. They'll compete at certain tracks, but they're not going to compete properly. And you know, there's nothing really we can say in terms of trusting a Ferrari. We'll come on to that in a bit. So Mercedes have done it. They know how to win these things. They really do. I thought there were little hints again as to, even though Valtteri Bottas out-qualified Lewis just comes alive on race day no matter what. As I said, just strikes me as remarkably ominous.
Yeah, I mean, if you if you look at Lewis, and through testing and anything like that, he's never really at testing that much compared to Valtteri. Valtteri seems to do a lot more development, and I do think, going back to testing, if you look at the Merc, it's what are they actually testing? They're not always testing for out and out pace in the car, because they know all about that through the sim work and through the wind tunnels and things like that. So you get teams like Ferrari who are literally just trying to, well, they appear to be trying to get the fastest time possible in testing to show the world, hey, this is what we can do. You don't need to do that in testing. You know, you might be testing your extra parts you'll be putting on the car in towards the end of the season to get yourself that extra marginal gain. But on qualifying, obviously Valtteri's done a great job and pips Lewis to it on Saturday. But you know, when the job needs to be done, Lewis is there, and that's why he's won so many titles.
It certainly is. Flagged it up. It was flagged up by Callum, actually, I think, on the group. Lewis Hamilton won the 900th Grand Prix, although it gets very pedantic over what the 900th Grand Prix is. There was a great thread on Twitter actually about what it actually is. I think it's not the 1000th Grand Prix, it was the 1000th race that counted towards the Formula One World Championship, I think, or even just the World Championship. Right. Very pedantic, and it's so pedantic that I forgot to call this the NRF 1000 podcast. So there we go. That's how much we care. We all got excited about the ramp up until we got here and realised that, you know, it wasn't 1,000 at all, and we'll probably have to do another one when they do the Grand Prix number. But anyway, Lewis not only won the 900th, he won the 1,000th. So that's not too bad. Too bad to bookmark those. In terms of Ferrari, how much of this was about their pace? How much of it was about them just ballsing it all up? I mean, what do we make of what they did with Charles Leclerc or Leclerc and Sebastian Vettel? Because for me, I didn't really I mean, obviously, I'm not bright. I'm just watching a race like a fan, and I see Seb sort of closing on Charles, but not. You know, I don't know. It didn't particularly seem like he was being amazingly held up. So they obviously wanted them to switch to free Seb, but it never struck me that all of a sudden Seb's just going to break free of Charles, because there didn't seem that differential. It just it seemed like they couldn't work out that maybe you're just not quite as quick as Mercedes, which is what I found myself sort of screaming at the telly.
I just found it bizarre, and it just spells to me is the reason why they haven't won a championship in so long. You know, I mean, yes, okay, you need the right tools to do the job, and they haven't got the car at the minute to do that. But even if they did, I mean, with kind of performances of how they're managing the team and running it whilst on track as well, I mean, this is a classic example of it. I mean, at this stage of the season, why on earth would you want to, you know, start handing out team orders to one particular driver? It's just kind of ludicrous, really. I mean, it almost makes you wonder whether there was something written into his contract that he will always be number one and given preferential treatment or something like that. But the thing is when they eventually got him past, he was never really got much more than a second or two, and you just sort of thought, well, what has it achieved, you know?
We had this weird situation where, I mean, Seb kept locking up, didn't he? I think a few times he has shown vulnerabilities when under pressure from Mercedes and other teams, and then I saw a piece, I can't remember where it was, sort of saying the last thing Sebastian Vettel needs, I think it was Phil Duncan from PA, last thing he needs at the moment is pressure from his teammate, because he's not really up to scratch against his rivals at the moment. And you know, Charles was basically kind of sacrificed as a rear gunner, wasn't he, to protect Sebastian, but arguably deserved a lot more than that, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, Seb has got a history of not dealing particularly well with a competitive teammate. When Danny Rick went into Red Bull, that seemed to completely mess him up because he wasn't the number one guy. And got onto the race on Sunday for Ferrari to switch to both drivers out when you've got two people in the same car. One's got DRS, one hasn't. Of course, he's going to catch up a little bit and going to appear to be slightly quicker, but by the time he's got past him, his tyres were a bit knackered, and is not necessarily the you know, it was a strange decision at the time. Didn't understand it. I thought, you know, there was an argument after the race of, well, they had to do something or change your strategy. You know, there are other ways that you can go about doing it. Split your strategy on your two different cars and give yourself a fighting chance, but you've got to give a fighting chance to both your drivers, especially at this early stage of the season, because Leclerc has proven that he's quick,
You spend all that effort trying to get an extra 1/10 of a second, 100th of a second in a pit stop or wherever, and then you cost one of your drivers a second by making them switch. What in what world is that logical? And in fairness, they got to the point where, of course, Charles let Seb through. Then it got to the point where we might have to let Charles back through past Seb because it's not working out, and we'll pit him. And Ted Kravitz came on. Welcome back, Ted, by the way. Comes on and goes, you know what would solve this? Just let him race. Let him get on with it. Don't stop him. Just honestly see how it plays out. You don't know how it will. And in fairness, Charles, he's not going to back down, is he, Steve? I think we can tell that. He's a young man. He's very talented, and it's quite exciting, really.
Because, in the last race, he said afterwards that he just ignored the team orders that he was given and just went for it. So, I would say, given the history of Ferrari and obeying team orders and all that sort of thing, best luck to him on that one.
It hasn't taken long, has it? We're 3 races into the season.
He's obviously means business. He's obviously, coming to Ferrari to win races and win a championship, and not to just be a number 2 when if he's blatantly faster than Vettel, which I thought he would be coming into, because I never have, and I don't rate Vettel, never have done. I don't care that he's won 4 world championships. You can say what you like about that, but I never have rated him. I think he's half the reason, or at least a good chunk of the reason, why Ferrari haven't won any championships. They've not got the right person there, leading the team.
Well, there's always been questions over Seb when he was at Red Bull, always constantly at the front of, is he actually a racing driver, or has he just got the quickest car? He did then go to Ferrari, and he did then prove he could overtake as well. So he's not the complete driver that Lewis is, but he's still one of the top 3-4 drivers on the track at the moment. But when Ferrari decided to let Kimi go and get a young upcoming quick driver, and I thought, great, we're actually going to see some 2 competitive teams with 2 competitive drivers, and then third race in, they're checking out team orders. It's like,
not working though, are they?
Actually, just very briefly, I just want to add one other point while I was talking about the subject of Vettel. One of the reasons, probably main reasons why I don't rate him is, I don't know if we can think back to after the first race of the season in Australia, and because Hamilton struggled, but it later turned out that I think there was something or other trapped in his front wing or something, or some damage or something like that. And they said, where do you think he's struggling? He sort of said, well, I've got some ideas, but I need to talk to my engineers about that, and we'll go through everything, sort it out, and I'm sure I'll get to bottom. But they interviewed Vettel and said, well, after the winter test and pace that you showed, what do you think is? And he just said, I have absolutely no idea. The car feels as good as it did in testing. I don't understand why we aren't the fastest. And I just thought, you've got no clue in how to develop that car or a car at that team. And earlier I read in one of the sport websites who was saying that Ferrari don't know yet how to unlock the pace in the car. And that was actually his quote-unquote words. And I thought, what does that tell you? You wouldn't hear that kind of comment coming from Hamilton. Not sort of saying, I'm sort of comparing the two as such, but he just seems to have no idea how to give the right feedback to the people at Ferrari to actually get that car where it needs to be to win races and dust championships. And that's why I don't rate him.
Martin Brundle, our own Martin Brundle, did say that this is going to be the start of a long-running saga this season, and I can't wait. It's going to be a lot of fun. There are loads of ways, of course, to get in touch with us here at the NRF1 podcast. The best place to start is patreon.com, patreon.com/NRF1, where you'll find posts, videos, F1 analysis, bonus podcasts, the key bit, and plenty more besides. You can also interact with us on social media, all the channels, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You'll find them with the handle at the NRF1, and you can email us at nrf1podcast@gmail.com. We love getting those. The website nrf1.uk, and new for 2019 is our WhatsApp service. You can join and submit your pictures, videos, and audio clips, as well as your video F1 reviews. Just send a message to 004477 1248 6958. Okay, let's fire up the NRF1 pit stops. Now, this is a one-stop pod these days. Now, where would you boys like to stop. I offer it up to you guys to choose. I had a little look down the results, and I have to say, I mean, it wasn't necessarily the best race. I'm not sure much caught my eyes beyond the top. But are you going to surprise me? What do you reckon?
I thought it was a bit sort of scrappy, really, in the sort of midfield race. It's a bit difficult, I find, to kind of pick one, really. Yeah, if you're going to look outside the top sort of 2-3 sort of teams.
I mean, everyone was getting very excited over Albon getting a point.
Hold that thought.
Okay, Will.
Hold that one, because we're going to do that in the next bit. What else, Phil? I tell you what, how about I offer one? McLaren. Fernando Norris. Fernando Norris. That's definitely should be his new name. Anyway, I would think I'm tired. Fernando Norris. I'm definitely that might stick. He had his first DNF, although he was classified for a bit because he basically went testing for about 30 laps. He had a tricky start of it, of course, not to his fault, and Sainz, basically they were all both victim to the Daniel Kvyat torpedo. Nice to see that launched again. He is definitely regressing to type from a couple of years ago, by the way, quite quickly. But there was something from Norris saying about how their pace is actually the best of the second division, if you like, outside the top three teams. And I mean, they were expecting to have a really tough weekend of it, but there do seem to be promising signs from McLaren this season. I mean, we haven't seen much from Carlos Sainz, it has to be said, but what do we make of McLaren so far?
I mean, any improvement from last year is going to look to be a massive step. I'm quite excited about Lando Norris. I think he's going to be a really good driver for McLaren. It's where they can back it up with the car for him, and we'll only know that in 3-4 races time when they've actually got to grips of actually trying to challenge for points again, rather than just getting overly excited by we could get 2 in the top 10 here. Forget about that. You're not Williams. You can go on and actually push on a bit. And I love McLaren. They're the team that I always look to. But let's not get carried away. Let's just see how many in like 2 or 3 races time, see where they are.
Yeah, I think it is better. I mean, as like Phil said, I mean, any improvement's going to be quite a large one on last season. But I mean, I think they do at this stage, from what you can tell, seem to sort of be firmly in probably the middle of the midfield, really, as opposed to last year where it was sort of bottom end or outside of that at some races. But I think it's kind of very much work in progress at that team. I mean, it's still very bizarre about what was been going on and last season and obviously many seasons before that. But I mean, I grew up with McLaren as well. I mean, for as long as I can remember watching Formula One, it was McLaren and Ferrari. From when I first started, whenever that was, I think it was probably probably back to the 90s or maybe early 2000s. I forget now, but. It's a real shame because half the time I just forget they're even there no more. Yeah, because I just got so used to them just being one of those teams at the back that you can easily just forget. Whereas for year after year, you would always see, even when they're off the pace, you would still see it like Red Bull. You'd still notice them. But yeah, it's a real shame. It would be nice to actually see them come back. It
would be indeed. We'll keep close eye on them, of course, over the rest of the season. A little plug here. We're not actually going to talk about it yet, Phil, but a little plug. Norfolk Notebook. You'll find that on our bonus Patreon podcast, where we will talk about Alex Albon. He had quite the weekend of it. Of course, he's Norwich backed. Full Contact, represented by Full Contact Norwich's own Alex Albon with Toro Rosso had a very decent weekend of it in the end. Of course, got voted driver of the day. So we're going to talk much more about that over in the Patreon podcast, which we'll tell you how to listen to in a bit. Okay, of the weekend awards time. Let's rattle through who we're going to give these to for the Chinese Grand Prix, shall we? Who was our Rodolfo Gonzalez driver of the weekend? Did we just mention him?
Yeah, I think so.
He did say, Alex Albon did say that he went from being the worst driver on Friday to the best driver on the Saturday. I think something like that, which is probably a fair point because he admitted himself he made quite the error, of course, which took him completely out of qualifying with his smash at the end of FP3. By the same token, he's never raced this track before, so he's going to have to learn it properly, and to then come through the field the way he did was impressive.
Yeah, but you only find the edge when you go off it, so you've got to push the boundaries, and free practice is what that's kind of about. okay, fine, he'd done it in a very spectacular fashion and completely trashed his motor. But hey, great all-round weekend for him. He's not going to make that mistake again.
No, indeed. It's not the first time that Alex has done well, is it? We're sort of seeing a driver who's doing quite well at the moment.
Yeah, it's good to see from me because we've had quite a number of British drivers come and go, and unfortunately they've been at teams where it sort of seems to be almost quite cutthroat. You know, you go have a bad half season and you're gone. That's not even, don't even get to the end of the season sort of thing. So it's good to see that he's actually doing quite well so early on. So hopefully he'll keep that seat, because actually the Toro Rosso car has actually probably been one of the better consistent midfield cars in recent seasons. Actually, that's just not a bad one to start in. I mean, you could be like poor Russell in the Williams at the back, which is obviously the last place you want to be in. You know, not necessarily Williams, but I mean at the back of the grid. So yeah, it's good to see. I mean, this is the most amount of British drivers we've had on the grid for quite a lot of years now. So fingers crossed they can stay there.
We're definitely claiming him as British, by the way, even though he's got his Thai race licence. Any other nominees? Anyone else who did shine? Because of course Alex did get a driver of the day, the main F1 award as well, which is great for him too.
Grosjean didn't crash, so well done.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that probably sums that one up. How about Team Lotus team of the weekend? Yeah, why Mercedes, Steve?
Do we need to say?
Yes. Yeah,
well, mostly for just being brilliant, obviously. But I mean, we could say that probably most weeks. But for the double pit stop, to pull that off, even at the best of times, is not easy. But I mean, to chance doing that when you're leading 1-2 is not normally something you see that team do. They're quite conservative, aren't they? You know, don't like to take any risks and things like that. And for me, that was just very much a two-finger salute to Ferrari to say, well, you know, this is a show of strength from us. We can do this when leading the race 1-2. Just that psychological blow to them. And I was sitting there just smiling when I saw it. I wasn't sitting there going, wow, look at this. I was just thinking, I know exactly what that is all about. And when they pulled off, I was like, fair play to you.
It did feel like showing off when they did it. But I mean, both drivers, I mean, Valtteri didn't want to do it, did he? Because he was going to lose time. Because as the second car, you tend to get held up very slightly, obviously. But he wasn't really, and it proved they were obviously trying to protect themselves against safety cars and tyre wear, I think, were the two main things. And it's just spectacular when they just pull it off like that.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I think it's the first time I've actually rewound the race to watch 5 times without it being a crash. It was brilliant. It was absolutely perfect. You know, when they called Valtteri in for his box, that was he said over the radio, okay, don't make me lose time, and absolutely no time lost whatsoever. It was perfect. It was, it was great.
Yeah, it's bang on. Well done, Mercedes. Pastor Maldonado of the weekend. I think we might have mentioned this one already as well.
Yeah.
I mean, he obviously feels the penalty was a bit harsh. I think he got a bit of backing from his team, who said that it was a bit harsh. But I mean, it was pretty stupid, wasn't it? I mean, it was like, oh gosh, here we go again.
Yeah, and the thing is, he has got a little bit of form from his previous stint in F1, and there's not many people get a second crack of the whip, and when you're still making decisions like that, you're wondering how long this second crack is going to last for.
I thought Andy Davidson was quite generous on the Sky coverage, because he said that Lando Norris had I love that now. I don't even know how I've come up with it. He said he went off the track and was then coming back on the track, and then when I saw a replay, I was like, well, if he did, it was by about 3 centimetres, and that was not like he suddenly appeared in front of Daniel. And you're just like, come on, man, just get it together. And it does seem like, I think he did all right in Australia, didn't he? But the last 2 races, it's just doing things where you're like, this is why it fell apart. And also, you then see the flurry of memes and whatever you about of launch torpedo and all this sort of stuff. So, kind of seen all this before, haven't we? And I guess the question with Red Bull, as always, is how much patience do they have. I mean, Pierre Gasly actually had a pretty decent race weekend of it, which he desperately needed. So that's good for him. But I mean, Toro Rosso probably wouldn't be shy of binning him off if there was someone to promote, which I guess is maybe the issue, that there might not be.
Well, that's kind of how he lost his seat last time. I think they wanted to get Verstappen along a bit quicker, because I think Ferrari was sniffing around, if I remember rightly. So, and I think he'd had a few kind of scrappy races, and they kind of made a big thing about it, and then all of a sudden he was off, and then in comes Verstappen. But yeah, I mean, you wouldn't put it past him, would you? Really? So yeah. That's...
Dr. Helmut Marko, he's not one to sit around and wait to see what happens. He seems to be the sort of guy who will make a change if he thinks that one needs to happen. If there's a younger driver coming through or somebody who's a bit more reliable, then I can see him taking it.
Hang on, indeed. Okay, and finally, our Giuliano Salvi moment of the weekend. I mean, the start was quite fun. I mean, it wasn't exactly a packed race full of incident, but I guess probably the team orders battle and shenanigans with Ferrari, unless anyone has anything that was a little bit more...
It was very brief, but I quite liked the little battle between Verstappen and Vettel. It was kind of one because obviously the history there, with the battles in the past, it was kind of like, is there going to be a coming together? Although it was very brief, I think it probably lasted all of about 20 seconds or something like that. But I quite like that. I thought it was good.
There were 2 spins on the way to the grid, which amused me because it was like, these tyres can't, these aren't going to work. Yeah, exactly. Kubica and Verstappen as well. So
Kravitz went all week.
Oh dear, poor Williams. And I did get to see the grid walk actually for the first time in a long time, where Esteban Ocon was with Martin Brundle. It's a bit cringy in half the places, and then they sort of ended up with this pretend or a sort of a set piece that clearly wasn't supposed to be there, but Toto was there and he got to speak to Esteban saying, this guy deserves to be on the grid, and Esteban, you've got to use this year really well. And he's like, I'm learning so much and I'm looking at the team and changing it all, which I thought was like, it was a bit like, oh god, put this out.
The grid walk a bit cringy anyway these days. It's something I keep looking at and thinking, is it about time that they just kind of scrap that and or try to do something different or something with it? It just seems a bit, nobody seems to really want to talk to him. And
we say that there was then a guy who chased back after Martin Brundle saying, I'm free to talk now, and Martin was like, no, I ain't got time for you, you've got to get to the turn. So that's even worse then, when you have people saying, please stop to talk to me, and Martin's like, no, I'm not talking to you, mate, sorry. There we go, we've got Toto over here, so there we go.
The whole going to last year's grid walk thing, when there was like an anniversary of televised F1, and there was an award for the grid walk, and they were talking about Martin Brundle, or Martin from Brundle, as we found out at the racetrack. And then there was this piece where Lewis came on and said, it's great, the grid walk, it's part of Formula One. Lewis has never spoken to him on the grid walk before. He's just one of the drivers like, no, please go away. And they had a whole big piece from him. It's just really odd.
Fair point. For the record, Ella Park has Brundle as the garage spelt with an A-double-L at the end, which is not the same as Martin Brundle, although it's supposed to be, but it is the name of a small village just outside Norwich, where I'm sure Martin Brundle has been because it's on the Norfolk Broads and is beautiful, but it's not the same Brundle. So there we go. Okay, let's rate the race then, shall we? Out of 11 as always. I haven't got Australia's score down here, but I think it was pretty low. Bahrain we gave a 9 to, which I think was quite generous. Last year China got 8.6, but I don't think we're going to get anywhere near that this time. Do you want to start the bidding, Steve?
6.
Yeah, I was going to say 6, Phil.
Yeah, I was going to go a little bit higher. I was going to go 7, so yeah, I'll stick with that.
That's 6 1/3 then, or something off the top of my head. That sounds about right. Brilliant stuff. And final question: who will be wearing the biggest smile as they take their private jet back from Shanghai?
It's not going to be a Ferrari driver. It's probably going to be Albon getting driver of the day.
I was just thinking of the race winner, taking the lead of the championship for the first time this season. But yeah, I mean, that's another good show actually.
I bet Lewis cannot believe his luck. There will be much more chat about the 2019 Chinese Grand Prix to come, alongside all the major talking points away from the track. Just check out patreon.com/NRF1 right after this pod for our bonus podcast. You can also download the app, of course, patreon.com/NRF1. You can join us there and get commenting, and we're going to start using that app much more as the season progresses, especially once the football season finishes. And of course, if you want to make sure you catch all of our podcasts on your podcast player of choice, then make sure you subscribe, and you can find most of the links over at nrf1.uk/pod subscribe, whether you're on Google Podcasts, Audio Boom, Deezer, Spreaker, or Stitcher, Acast, Spotify, whatever. We are there. If you can't find us and we're not where we're supposed to be, let us know. Email nrf1podcast@gmail.com. And if you listen to us via iTunes, please give us a rating and a review, because that's nice. The link is nrf1.uk/is on iTunes.
Hello everyone, this is Jake Humphrey here. You're listening to the best Formula One podcast from the best county in the world, the NRF1 podcast. And I wasn't paid any money to say that.
No, I did give you some beers. Okay, next up is Baku. Very exciting. The race continually delivers. It's been our highest scoring race rating for both the last 2 years, a 12 in 2017 and an 11.35 in 2018. Bear in mind both those scores were out of 11, so that's how ridiculous that is. Surely we can't get a third one.
Oh, I reckon we will. I've yet to kind of figure out as to why it gives us such a good race. Well, probably because I'm just not really paying any attention to it. I'm just enjoying how great it is, but it just, I think you can see that he's just going to consistently deliver now. It's just one of those circuits for whatever that reason is. But yeah, when I was thinking, oh, hang on, what's the next race? And I looked at it, I was like, oh, yes. Great, because I thought the last sort of 2-3 maybe with Australia, just a bit sort of average. But yeah, that's the first sort of best one in my mind.
I mean, I thought it was Spain next, so I got myself in a bit of a muddle. I was like, oh yeah, Barcelona. Yeah, I think they've shuffled it around.
Changed a bit because it was always Spain was always the first European one, wasn't it? And I thought they'd done Azerbaijan like some point in the European season in previous seasons.
They did a few years ago, yeah, because it was a European Grand Prix in its first year, wasn't it? I think so. Even though I think that's questionable geography, but. I mean, yeah, I guess it's got this really tight section. It's great fun to drive on the game, by the way, because it's this nuts tight section. You're going through the old town, and then you've just got a drag strip, and I guess that contrast offers a lot of opportunities. But we've also seen a load of mistakes. I mean, none more so than Romain Grosjean, of course, driving into the wall and blaming someone else, or his engineer blaming Marcus Ericsson, wasn't it? That probably finished his Formula One career. But what do you reckon, Phil? I mean, do you look forward to this as much as us?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I look forward to most of the races.
Purist.
Yeah, I do love it. Even the Lamotard Monaco, which. Yeah,
it's not a gimmick.
It's not a gimmick, apparently. But no, it's a good race. There's plenty of opportunities for people to stick it into the wall, which is great.
All right then, well that probably means that we'll get on to our predictions. These are for our prediction league. If you're listening and you want to get involved, you can most definitely. All you need to do is submit your 5 predictions, or maximum of 5, you can do fewer. Submit them to patreon.com/NRF1. There's an opportunity there and a thread where you can there will be a thread where you can post your predictions for the next race. You can also submit your predictions via email and all the usual social media channels, but I'm trying to make sure that we get them all on Patreon too. If you are a patron, then you automatically have official entry into the prediction league if you come up with either the best prediction of a Grand Prix weekend or the best at the end of the season, best tally, best score at the end of the season. You will win a £5 credit for either motorsport-merchandise.com or the Classic Team Lotus shop. And of course, if you do that over 3 or 4 Grand Prix, then you get to accumulate a good little voucher where you can buy whatever you want, of course, on us. So that's all good. That's for the Patreon members. If you're not a Patreon member but you still want to get involved, please do. You can submit your predictions and we'll throw you into the mix as well. But of course, you won't win a prize, but that's okay. It's still a load of fun predicting it. And at which point, we'll say congratulations to Nathan Tuck, who came up with the best score in China, in Bahrain. He top scored in Bahrain. Max Carey got the top score back in Australia. I haven't done China as yet, but we will keep them up. And also, if you head over to nrf1.uk/predictf1, we will have the updated standings over the next week or two. I'll be working on those and you'll get to see those maybe the next month, but certainly once we get into the season properly, you'll be able to see the up-to-date standings there, follow how you're doing and work out who you need to beat. Steve, of course, a 3 times champion, but your first predictions of the season, because he doesn't care now. He's gone all Sebastian Vettel. He's won his World Championships now, couldn't give a toss.
It makes me look arrogant though, doesn't it? But the reality is that I've just kind of not been as involved and thus half forgotten and half sort of thought, well, it's a bit late now and indeed.
Well, Steve, this is your moment. Give us, we'll take your full 5 in the Patreon bonus podcast, but can you just give us one prediction to get us underway in this pod, please?
A 10 out of 10, or 10 out of 11 race rating, should I say, as we do out of 11.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, we'll try not to manipulate that so you don't win then. A 10 out of 11 race rating, so that's quite low. Relatively speaking.
Well, I was then about to say 10 out of 10, and then I realised that we do out of 11.
Do you want to say 11 out of 11?
Okay, for 11 out of 11, yeah, that was my original intention.
Big shout there from Steve, and completely out of control in terms of the F1 of an F1 prediction. But there we go. I'm going to say fewer than 15 or fewer classified finishes. So at least 5 retirements, which isn't a massive amount, but that's enough.
One of those retirements would be Grosjean after sticking it in the wall.
You really going there?
Yeah. Always, yeah.
Hey, well, you're not going to get a kudos point for that. No. Brilliant. So the rest of the prediction will come in our Patreon podcast, which you can catch after this. It'll be EP241. So keep an eye out for it. If you can't see it when you clock on, just keep checking back because it'll be there pretty soon. I promise you. We have got a fantasy league team. I've got no idea what the standings are. We haven't updated the team, but we are there, and we have a fantasy league as well. Make sure you join it. You can find the code. That's also at patreon.com, and we'll share it as well during the week if you haven't already joined and you want to. Or get in touch and let us know, and we'll make sure that you're added to the list. You'll be beating our team, I'm sure. Because if we're beating anyone, that's ridiculous. But as Peds did prove last year, by not changing his team once, you can still win the thing, which doesn't seem right, really. But there we go. You should be rewarded for effort. Anyway, I think we're done. If you want to hear more from us about the Chinese Grand Prix, our full predictions ahead of Baku, and of course all the bits in between in the F1 world, then you can take in our exclusive bonus Patreon podcast. For that and a whole load of extra content, just check out patreon.com/NRF1. There's a lot of plugs for Patreon in this, and it should be with you straight after this podcast. But if you don't see it, as I said, keep checking back until EP241 rears its ugly head. We will return with E242. That will be our Baku review, our Azerbaijan Grand Prix reflections, with another bonus Patreon edition to follow that, all shortly after round 4 of the 2019 Formula 1 World Championship. In the meantime, it's thanks to Future Radio, thanks as always to the Rushcutters, and goodbye from the crew tonight, which is Phil. Good night, Phil.
Good night.
Good night, Steve.
Good night.
This has been the NRF1 podcast. Fingers crossed for some more Baku mayhem, and then we can revel in the fun on the other side. Until then, good night.